Are you at a stage in your life where you are asking, what's next? You have dreams, goals, aspirations, but you have allowed fear, lack of focus, maybe procrastination to get in the way? Well, pastor, author, speaker, Adonis LENZY joins me today to talk about achieving your next step in life. Welcome, Adonis.
Hey, Maggie, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Tell me about the motivation for this book.
You know, I think the motivation for this book, I've been in ministry for over 20 years, and I've just sat across the desk from a lot of people, Maggie, that they felt like God had a plan for their life, and they knew God had a plan, but they were waiting on God to actually make it happen. And so, you know, I'd sit and visit with them, and I'm like, hey, you've got to do some things to partner with the plan of God. And they'd come back the week after that, and still they've done nothing. I'm like, no, you've got to do some practical steps. And so it just really motivated me to encourage people, yes, hold on to that plan for God, but here's some practical things that you need to know, because these practical things are going to help you partner with God to bring that plan to pass.
And you've learned that through your own life experience. You talk in the book about moving away to college. You talk about eventually moving to Nashville, meeting your wife. There were a lot of next steps that you had to take, and some of them were scary.
Yeah, many of those were scary, because sometimes when God gets ready to move you from where you are to the next place, you've got to let go of something. And sometimes it's letting go of the security, the comfort, and because we love to be comfortable. But God comes along and gives you a plan that's going to stretch you. It's going to challenge you. So there are many times where God moved me from one place to another. And I remember just living in Texas and getting ready to move to Nashville. I had to think about it for a while, because it's like, Lord, you're moving me across the state here. And I had to sell everything. I loaded up my little SUV and I drove to Nashville. But I knew God was taking me there. And I had a dream, Maggie. It's, you know, I wanted a family. I'd been in ministry, a single pastor for many years, and it's like I knew God had a family in mind for me. And so, you know, I can go back to when I was driving to Nashville. I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm totally trusting you. I'm taking this step of faith. It's a risk, and that's the deal. It's always a risk, but the reward is much greater. And so fast forward, got to Nashville, met my wife, and so got married, and 2 kids later, we're just a happy, wonderful family.
You talk about risk, and that is scary for some people, and I think that stops a lot of people from moving forward. You talk about, you know, in your book, 80% of people sit on, you know, Sunday evening and they're dreading going to work on Monday morning. I've definitely been there, where, you know, you're at a stage in your life where you're like, I really don't want to go there. So let's talk about some of those practical steps. You say, getting unstuck. How do you, first of all, know that you are stuck? And so you say anger, jealousy, irritation, sense of hopelessness.
And that's the deal, because when you're stuck in a rut and a routine that you don't like, once again, waking up on Monday morning, getting ready to go do the same old thing of what you don't already enjoy, then some anger is going to come up, some frustration, and people around you, they're going to sense that. You know, they're going to sense your irritability, and it's like, okay, what's wrong with them? They have no more joy. And so you've just got to be honest with yourself, because so many times we try to fake ourselves out, say, you know what, no, I'm good. No, you know when you're not good. You know when you're stuck. You know when you're in Settleville. I talk about Settleville, and that's that place that people don't want to push themselves out of. But when you realize you're stuck, it's like walking into a mall and you go to the kiosk that says, you are here, okay? And so it's okay to realize that you're stuck, but just don't stay there. So once you realize you are stuck, then you can realize, too, you've got the power to change all of that.
You talk about anger, and I think that's something, too. Sometimes people direct their anger to God, because they say, you know, God, you allowed me to be in this position, or you allowed this person to do this. What is that relationship like when you talk about anger? How should we see God in following our next step?
Well, I think with that, people become angry, and so we want to blame.
Yeah.
You know, we never want to look internal. We want to blame. And so, unfortunately, some people blame God. You know, God, you allowed this to happen. God, you know, you've got me stuck in this place. And the deal is, if you quit blaming and quit playing the blame game and start looking internal, and you can understand that your relationship with God connects you to the smartest man in the universe. Okay, he's got the next step for you. And so, but if you're too busy blaming people and you're too busy being angry, you'll never see what's in front of you. It's almost like a blinder. And people, you know, look through that anger, and it's like, you know what, I'm so focused on anger, I can't see the next thing that God has in store for me.
Yeah, you talk about mind monsters, which I think is so key. It's a battle.
Yeah.
It's a battle with our minds.
Absolutely. I think so many people feel like, okay, time is against me.
Yeah.
Or, I've tried that before and I crashed and burned. And all of a sudden, these mind monsters start creeping back up and whispering to us. And they start telling us, you're never going to make it. You tried that before. You're going to step out in faith and you're going to fall and people are going to laugh at you. They're going to blame it on God. And so we sit there and entertain these thoughts. And that becomes a huge distraction as well, because the mind monster that's telling you, you can't, you won't, man, that's too big of a risk, and you're focused on that. And here's the deal. God's voice is the one that's telling you that you can. And yes, it's a risk, but I've got a great reward for you on the other side of that risk. All you have to do is trust me, and that's the voice that we need to be listening to.
And that voice can be tapped into prayer. And talk about the power of prayer in the process of figuring out what your next step is.
And that's the deal. So many people, they start looking around.
Yeah.
Instead of looking towards God. And I think your first step, once again, when you realize you're stuck, or when you realize God is stirring something on the inside of you. And that's how God has spoken to me throughout my entire journey with him. There just comes a season where I know God is shifting some things, and God begins to whisper into my spirit and begins to stir some stuff up. And that's where I have to press into God. I can't just jump ship. Oh, God's talking. I got to go do it. No, I've got to press into God and really hear the voice of God for some direction and for that next step. I've got to have that peace. And that is so important right there, Maggie. I believe the peace, knowing that, okay, this is God speaking to me because I've had time in prayer. I've put it before the Lord. God's brought confirmation. So I've got peace to take that next step. And the reason why we need that peace, because when we take that next step, so many times in our minds, we plan it out, man, I'm going to take that next step and things are just going to fall in place for me and everything's going to be okay. But you know what? Being a Christian doesn't exempt you from the hardships and the misfortunes and the slam doors and the rejections or getting fired. And we've got to press through that stuff. But as long as you've taken the time to hear the voice of God and you received his peace, that's going to keep you moving forward in your journey.
And you know that he's with you through the process.
Yes.
Dream distractions. The distraction of tomorrow, putting things off until tomorrow. The art of procrastination.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. That's the thing, I come across so many people that say, someday.
Yeah.
Someday I'll get to that. Someday I'm really going to go after that dream.
And you see them the next day and they're still talking about this.
Someday I'm really going to get that relationship with God someday. And so someday never happens, And so I try to come along with a message to encourage people to say goodbye to someday and start moving into your tomorrow.
The Winans have that song, Tomorrow. There you go.
There you go.
The distraction of applause. I love that. Talk about that.
That's a huge one, because so many times when we start moving forward into our destiny and things start happening, good things start happening, and it looks like, wow, people are starting to see us really make progress, and they start applauding us and they start patting us on the back, saying, man, you're doing a great job. God is all over you. You're anointed by God. And if we're not careful, we will let that convince us that we've already arrived.
Yes.
Man,
and we'll forget about God.
And we'll forget about God, and we'll forget about, no, we've still got to work on our dream. We've got to work on the progress, and we relax when we listen to the applause of people. So I tell people, don't let that be a distraction. It's okay for people to applaud you, but if you're hung up on that, what are you going to do when your cheerleaders are no longer around and nobody's applauding you? Then you're going to think you're missing God. No. God will make sure that all of your cheerleaders are not with you so that you can still keep moving forward down the field.
Amen to that one. The distraction of comparison, huge. And especially with social media, that has just heightened it even more.
It has. Funny story, like even when I was writing my book, and it's so funny because there's people on social media that I kind of learn stuff from.
Yeah.
And so I remember sitting down getting ready to write, and all of a sudden, one of the people that I learned from social media, something pops up on their feed, and I start comparing myself. I'm like, I talked myself out of even writing because I'm like, there's no way I can be as good as that person. And so I got discouraged right there sitting in front of my computer because I began to compare myself with somebody else. And that's the worst thing we can do. I tell people, you be you. It's okay to learn from people. It's okay to glean information from people, but never compare yourself, because so many times we look at somebody's success and we forget, Maggie, their pre-success story.
Yes.
And that's the story that we need to hear about, because that's the story that's going to motivate us to keep moving forward.
I love that, the pre-success story. Because you're right, that's where we learn the faults that they made and the lessons that they learned so that we can not make those mistakes
Exactly.
as well.
And we learned that they went through some struggles. You know, we
Yes.
look at their success and we think, man, they've got it all made. But it's like, you know, sit down with that person and I guarantee you, they will spend all day telling you about their pre-success story, about the slam doors and the failures and the times where they quit. And then they have to start all over again. And so those are the stories, I believe, that come along and just inspire you because that's real and that's real talk. And you begin to say, you know what, I'm in that season right now. But if they push through, then that must mean I can push through because we're serving the same God.
That's right. The book is called Next by Adonis Lindsay. And Adonis, people can pick this up on your website.
Yes, my website, AdonisLenzy.com. They can also go to Amazon and Barnes & Nobles. And so we're just excited about the message. And it's just my heart to encourage as many people as I can.
You definitely are. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.